The airport felt louder than usual. Not because of noise, but because of life happening everywhere at once. Laughter echoed from reunions. Children ran into their parents' arms. People cried openly without shame, holding each other like time had finally forgiven them. But Captain Sarah Mitchell stood still, like she didn't belong to any of it. Her military boots rested firmly on the polished floor, but her mind was somewhere else, somewhere colder, quieter, heavier. She had just returned from deployment. 6 months in a conflict zone where silence meant danger and sleep, meant vulnerability. Now she was back in a place where silence meant nothing at all, yet still felt dangerous. Her uniform was clean, pressed, perfect. But she didn't feel clean. She didn't feel perfect. She felt distant from herself. A version of her had stayed overseas. The other had come home. Neither felt complete. Waiting for something she couldn't name. Sarah checked the exit again. People were leaving. Families were leaving. But she stayed. Not moving. Waiting. She didn't even know what exactly she was waiting for. A hug, a smile, a familiar voice cutting through the crowd. Or maybe just proof that she still had a life waiting for her outside missions and military orders. Then she saw him. Ethan Mitchell. He stood near the glass wall, slightly away from the crowd. Not rushing. Not searching wildly like others. Just waiting quietly. That was new. He used to run toward her. Now he stood still, as if he wasn't sure if she would still feel like home. Sarah's chest tightened slightly. Not pain. Not joy. Something in between. The walk that felt longer than distance. She walked toward him. Each step echoed louder in her mind than in reality. 10 steps. 9. 8. She noticed things she hadn't before. Ethan looked thinner. A little more tired. His hair slightly longer. His expression more controlled. Less boyish. More grown in a way that didn't match her memory. And that scared her more than any battlefield ever had. Because war changes people. But so does waiting. Finally, they stood face to face. For a moment, neither spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was unfamiliar. Like two people trying to remember a language they once spoke fluently. Ethan broke the silence first. His voice was soft. "Welcome home, Captain." That word hit her immediately. Captain. Not Sarah. Not sweetheart. Not wife. Just rank. She nodded slowly. "I'm home." But even as she said it, she didn't feel it. The hug that didn't come. Sarah waited for it. The hug. The tight, emotional collapse into each other's arms that she had imagined during long nights overseas. But it didn't happen. Instead, Ethan hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. But enough. Enough for Sarah to notice. Enough for everything to feel slightly off balance. Instead of pulling her in, he picked up her bag. "I'll take that," he said. Normal words. Normal action. But something inside her shifted. Because it wasn't what she expected. And expectations are dangerous when reality starts changing shape. The car ride, where silence speaks loudest. The city passed by outside the window. Life continued. People crossed roads. Cars honked. Vendors shouted. Everything was normal. But inside the car, nothing was. Ethan drove carefully. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, staring forward. Neither turned fully toward the other. Ethan tried first. "How was the flight?" "Long," she said. Pause. "How was everything there?" Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. Same, she replied. Dust, heat, orders. Ethan nodded like he understood. But he didn't ask more. That silence mattered. Because before, he would ask everything. Now he asked carefully. Like she might break. Or worse, like she might not come back even when she's sitting right next to him. The city that didn't stop for war. As they drove through familiar streets, Sarah noticed something strange. Everything looked the same. The same bakery. The same traffic light that always turned red too quickly. The same old billboard slightly faded at the edges. But she felt like she was seeing it for the first time. As if she had stepped into a world that moved forward without her permission. Ethan glanced at her once. You okay? Sarah nodded automatically. I'm fine. But she wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Because fine was a habit now. Not a feeling. The house that remembered her better than she did. When they arrived, Sarah paused at the gate. The house stood exactly as she remembered. Warm, familiar, safe. At least visually. But her body didn't react the same way. She didn't rush inside. She didn't smile. She just stood there. Ethan noticed. You don't have to rush, he said gently. Sarah blinked. That sentence shouldn't have mattered. But it did. Because in the military, everything is rushed. Orders. Movement. Decisions. Life. But here, someone was telling her to slow down. And she didn't know how to respond to that anymore. Inside, familiar walls, unfamiliar feeling. The door opened. The house smelled like home. Cedar polish. Coffee. Clean fabric. Everything was exactly how she left it. But still, something felt missing. Ethan placed her bag down. I cleaned up, he said. Fixed the sink too, it was leaking. Sarah looked around slowly. You fixed it yourself. He shrugged slightly. Yeah, YouTube helped. A small smile formed on her lips. But it didn't reach her eyes. Because she remembered a time when she used to fix things. When she used to be the one solving problems. Now, someone else had learned how to live without her. That realization didn't hurt loudly. It hurt quietly. And that was worse. Dinner, 2 lives at one table. That night they sat together. Food was warm. Conversation was not. Ethan tried again. So you're here for 3 weeks. Sarah nodded. Yeah. That's good, he said. We can spend time together. A pause. Then another. But neither knew what spend time meant anymore. Because time together used to be natural. Now it felt scheduled. Forced. Careful. Ethan continued softly. I missed you. Sarah looked at him. And for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Because missing someone sounds simple. But her life wasn't simple anymore. So she said the only thing she knew how to say. I know. Not I missed you too. Not I'm here now. Just, I know. And that silence after her words said everything neither of them wanted to admit yet. Night, the distance you can feel without touching. Later that night, Sarah stood in the bathroom. She stared at her reflection. Same face. Same eyes. But something behind them felt different. Tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Ethan appeared behind her doorway. You okay? He asked again. She nodded. But this time, he didn't leave immediately. He stepped closer. You don't have to be strong here, he said softly. That sentence broke something. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But deeply. Sarah turned slightly. You think I'm pretending? Ethan hesitated. I think you're surviving, he said carefully. That word, surviving, it wasn't wrong, but it wasn't comforting either. Sarah exhaled sharply. You don't understand what I've seen. I know, he said, but I'm not trying to compete with it. I'm trying to reach you. That line stayed in the air longer than silence. Then Ethan stepped back. I'll let you rest. And he left. The bed that felt too big. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, half uniform still on. She didn't move, didn't change, didn't lie down immediately. She just stared at the empty space beside her. Once that space felt natural. Now it felt like distance had taken physical form. She lay down slowly, eyes open, listening to silence. Because in her world, silence always meant something was coming. Even here, even at home, even beside the man who once felt like safety. And as she closed her eyes, she realized something she wasn't ready to say out loud. Coming home was not the end of the war. It was just a different battlefield. Morning arrived quietly. Too quietly. No alarms, no urgency, no mission briefings, no boots hitting concrete floors. Just stillness. Sarah Mitchell woke up before sunrise. Not because she was rested, but because her body no longer knew how to sleep peacefully. She sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, staring at her hands. They looked the same, but they didn't feel the same. Those hands had held weapons, carried wounded soldiers, signed life-or-death decisions. Now they were just hands. In a house, in a life she was supposed to fit back into. But nothing felt like it fit anymore. The kitchen, a small thing, becomes the first trigger. She walked into the kitchen barefoot. Ethan was already awake. He stood by the counter, pouring coffee. For a moment there was peace. Almost normal. Almost. He turned slightly when he heard her. Morning, he said gently. Sarah nodded, morning. That was it. A fragile bridge between two people trying not to fall back into silence. Sarah reached for the coffee machine. Pressed a button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Still nothing. A small breath left her nose. Ethan noticed immediately. Here, he said, stepping forward, you have to. I know how to use a coffee machine, Sarah interrupted. Not loud, but sharp enough. Ethan stopped, hands halfway raised. Okay, he said calmly, I wasn't saying you don't. But the damage had already started. Because it wasn't about coffee. It was about everything unsaid between them. The first crack in the morning calm. Sarah stepped back slightly. This place feels different, she said. Ethan frowned. It is different, you've been gone for months. That sentence landed harder than expected. Sarah turned toward him slowly. So I don't know my own house now. That's not what I said. But that's what you meant. Silence dropped. Heavy. Instant. Ethan exhaled through his nose. I'm just trying to talk to you. Sarah laughed once. Not humor. Not joy. Something sharper. Talk, she said. You think this is talking. You think I came back and everything just resets. Ethan's voice lowered. I didn't say that. But you expect it, she replied instantly. That hit. Because it was half-true. And half-true things hurt the most. Ethan's breaking point begins quietly. Ethan rubbed his face. Tired already. You used to be different when you came back, he said carefully. Sarah froze slightly. Different how? He hesitated. Then said it anyway. You used to come home, not a soldier still stuck in survival mode. That word. Survival. It landed like a trigger. Sarah stepped forward slightly. "You think I'm choosing this?" "No," Ethan said quickly. "That's not what I meant. You don't understand what I've been through." "I know," he said. "But I'm not your enemy." That sentence stopped both of them. Because it was true. But truth doesn't always help when emotions are already bleeding. The argument escalates from nothing. Sarah grabbed her jacket from the chair. "I don't have time for this," she said. Ethan's voice rose slightly. "For what talking?" She turned sharply. "For feeling like I don't belong anywhere anymore." Silence. Even the house seemed to pause. Ethan blinked. That wasn't anger. That was pain spilling out. Sarah didn't wait. She walked past him. Out of the kitchen. Down the hallway. Out the door. Outside, where silence becomes loud. Cold air hit her face. She stopped near the gate. Breathing heavier now. Not from anger. From overload. Her phone buzzed. Ethan calling. She stared at it. Didn't answer. Not because she didn't care. Because she didn't trust her voice right now. She leaned against the car. Closed her eyes. And for a moment, the world shifted. Flashback, the weight she never leaves behind. Gunfire. Dust. Shouting. A soldier falling too fast. A decision made in seconds. A mistake that still echoed in her mind. Sarah's breath hitched. Her eyes snapped open. She was back. In a quiet street. A normal morning. But her body didn't know that yet. Her body was still there. Where survival was everything. Where emotions were dangerous. Where hesitation meant loss. Inside the house, Ethan left alone with silence. Ethan stood in the kitchen for a long time after she left. The coffee machine beeped softly. He ignored it. He looked at the hallway. Empty. That emptiness felt familiar. Too familiar. Because while Sarah was deployed, he had practiced this moment. Her return. Their reunion. Their life restarting. But reality wasn't restarting anything. It was continuing two separate lives in the same space. He whispered to himself, "I don't know how to reach you anymore." Sarah doesn't leave, but doesn't return either. She sat in the car without driving. Hands on the wheel. But frozen. Her phone buzzed again. "Ethan, I didn't mean to hurt you." Another message followed. "I just miss us." Sarah stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered. Then she typed, "I don't know how to be who you miss." She paused. Then sent it. And immediately regretted how honest it was. The emotional distance becomes real. Inside the house, Ethan read the message. He didn't respond immediately. Because sometimes, there is no response strong enough for that kind of truth. He sat down slowly. Hands on his knees. Not angry. Not frustrated. Just tired. Because love wasn't the problem. Distance was. And distance wasn't something you could fix with words. When two people miss each other, but not the same version. Sarah finally started the car. But didn't drive. She stared forward. Thinking. Not about war. Not about missions. But about something harder. Marriage. Not the romantic version. The real one. The version where two people change in different directions. And still try to hold on. A quiet ending that changes everything. Ethan finally sent one last message. "I'm not asking you to be the same. I just don't want to lose you while you're still here." Sarah read it. Didn't reply. But her grip on the steering wheel loosened slightly. For the first time that day, not everything felt like a fight. Just sadness. Shared. Unspoken. Heavy. The house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt worse. Quiet. Controlled. Like two people were carefully avoiding the one thing that could break everything, even though it already felt broken. Sarah Mitchell came back just before noon. No dramatic entrance. No apology text. No warning. Just the sound of the front door opening slowly, like she wasn't fully sure she still had permission to enter her own life. Ethan was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, not scrolling, just holding it, like it was the only thing keeping him connected to something outside the silence. When he saw her, he didn't stand immediately. That alone said enough. Sarah noticed, but didn't comment. She closed the door behind her. Soft click. Too loud in the silence. The space between them feels physical now. Sarah walked past him. Not ignoring. Not avoiding. Just unsure where to land emotionally. She removed her jacket slowly. Hung it. Sat down on the opposite side of the room. Not next to him. Not far away. Just far enough. Ethan finally spoke. "You're back." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even relief. Just observation. Sarah nodded. "I didn't leave." That sentence hit differently than she intended. Because it wasn't about location. It was about presence. A conversation that struggles to begin. Minutes passed. Neither spoke. Then Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I read your message." Sarah didn't respond. "I'm not trying to pressure you," he continued carefully. "I just don't know how to do this anymore." That was new. Ethan didn't usually admit that. Sarah looked at him for the first time fully. "You think I do?" she asked quietly. That question changed the air. Because neither of them had an answer. The real problem finally shows its face. Ethan exhaled. "This isn't about coffee machines or small arguments," he said. Sarah stayed silent. "It feels like," he paused, searching for words, "like you left once and something didn't come back with you." Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. "That's not fair." "I know," he said immediately, "but it's how it feels." That honesty didn't make it easier. It made it real. Sarah stood up slowly. "Do you know what I come back from?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer. "Not just missions," she continued. "Not just orders, not just nights without sleep." Her voice lowered. "People don't come back from where I go the same." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Ethan finally breaks his silence. He nodded slowly. "I don't expect you to be the same," he said. Sarah looked at him sharply. "But you expect something," she replied. That stopped him. Because she was right. He swallowed. "I expect connection," he admitted, "even if everything else changes." That word. Connection. It lingered in the room like something fragile. Sarah turned away slightly. "I don't know how to connect anymore," she said honestly. And that was the first time it sounded less like anger. And more like fear. A flashback hits without warning. Sarah suddenly froze. Her breathing changed. Not visible panic. Internal. Ethan noticed immediately. Sarah. But she wasn't fully there anymore. She was back in a convoy. Night mission. Radio static. A wrong turn. A split-second decision. A voice screaming for backup that didn't arrive in time. Her hand clenched slightly. Her body remembering before her mind could stop it. Then, she blinked. Back in the living room, breathing slightly uneven, Ethan stood up now. Careful, not approaching too fast. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded too quickly. "I'm fine." But it wasn't convincing anymore. Not even to her. Ethan realizes something important. He softened his voice. "You don't have to be fine here." That sentence again. Sarah looked at him. "Tired now. Really tired." "You keep saying that," she said. "Because it's true. It's not that simple." "I know," he replied, "but neither is losing you while you're sitting right next to me." That line stayed. Neither moved for a moment. The first honest admission. Sarah sat down again. This time slower. Like her body finally gave up resisting. "I don't feel like I'm here all the time," she admitted quietly. Ethan didn't interrupt. She continued. "Sometimes I come home, but my mind doesn't." Silence. "I hear noises that aren't here. I expect danger where there isn't any. I don't know how to switch it off." Her voice wasn't strong now. It was real. Ethan listened without moving. For the first time, he wasn't trying to fix it. Just understand it. Ethan's perspective finally comes out. "I feel like I'm watching you disappear slowly," he said. Sarah looked at him. Not angry. Just listening. "I cook, I fix things, I keep everything running," he continued. "But I can't reach you." He paused. That's the hardest part. That honesty hit differently. Because it wasn't blame. It was helplessness. A moment of almost connection. Sarah looked down at her hands. Then slowly said, "I didn't know how much I changed until I came back." Ethan nodded slightly. "I didn't know how much I changed while waiting," he replied. That was the closest they had come to understanding each other in days. Maybe weeks. Maybe longer. But it didn't fix anything. It just revealed everything. The distance that still exists. Ethan stood up slowly. "I don't want to fight you," he said gently. Sarah looked at him. "I don't want to fight you either." A pause. But neither knew how to move forward from that. Because love wasn't missing. Understanding was. And understanding doesn't return just because two people want it to. Night approaches, two people, one roof, two worlds. That evening they ate dinner again. Less tension, but not more connection. Just silence that had learned how to behave politely. Sarah noticed Ethan watching her sometimes. Not in anger. Not in frustration. Just quietly. Like he was trying to recognize someone familiar in a slightly different face. After dinner, she went to the balcony. Ethan stayed inside. Neither followed. The balcony scene, where truth finally sinks in. Cold air touched her skin. Sarah leaned on the railing. Below, the street was alive. Normal life. Laughing couples. Passing cars. Children shouting. She felt like she was behind glass. Watching. Not participating. Her phone buzzed. She looked. Didn't open it immediately. Ethan's message. "I'm still here." That sentence broke something small inside her. Because it wasn't demanding. It wasn't emotional pressure. It was just presence. And presence is sometimes harder to deal with than distance. The night didn't feel like night anymore. It felt like a pause that had gone on too long. Sarah Mitchell stood on the balcony, gripping the cold railing with hands that had survived more chaos than comfort. Below her, the world kept moving like nothing inside her life was unraveling. Cars passed. People laughed. Somewhere a dog barked. Normal life. A life she used to live without thinking. Now she watched it like someone visiting it from far away. Inside the house, light spilled softly through the curtains. Ethan was there. She could feel it without seeing him. That strange thing about marriage, when someone becomes part of your awareness even in silence. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look immediately this time, because she already knew who it was. Ethan. Still here. Still trying. That was the problem. He wasn't giving up, and she didn't know how to meet him halfway anymore. Inside the house, the weight of waiting. Ethan stood near the kitchen counter, not doing anything, just existing in the space she had left behind when she went outside. The house was quiet again, but this silence was different. Earlier silence had tension. This silence had exhaustion. He looked at the balcony door. Sarah's shadow was visible through the glass. So close, still unreachable. He exhaled slowly. Not frustration anymore. Just tired understanding. Because some fights don't end with shouting. They end with people slowly realizing they don't know how to reach each other without breaking themselves in the process. Sarah finally walks back in. She opened the balcony door slowly. Cold air followed her inside for a moment before disappearing. Ethan turned his head slightly. No surprise. Just awareness. She didn't sit immediately. She stood near the door, like she wasn't sure where she belonged in the room anymore. Then she said quietly, "I don't know what you want from me anymore." Ethan didn't answer instantly. Because the truth was, he didn't either. After a moment he said, "I don't want anything from you." That made her look up. He continued, "I just want you here, not half here, not far away while standing next to me." Silence. That sentence didn't accuse her. It exposed the reality. The breaking point that does look like breaking. Sarah finally sat down on the couch. Not dramatically. Not emotionally collapsing. Just sitting. Like her body had stopped resisting gravity. "I'm tired," she said. Ethan nodded. "I know." That was all he said. Not "you'll be fine." Not "it will get better." Just acknowledgement. And somehow that was heavier. Sarah looked at him. "I used to think coming home would fix everything," she admitted. Ethan stayed quiet. "But it doesn't feel like home anymore," she added. That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else they had said. Ethan's voice softened. "Because home isn't a place," he said, "it's people." A pause. "And right now, we don't know how to be the same people in the same space." The truth they both avoided finally appears. Sarah leaned forward slightly. "I feel like I'm stuck between two lives," she said. Ethan listened. "One life is out there," she continued, "where everything is fast, dangerous, clear." Her voice lowered. "And this one feels slow, confusing, quiet in a way that doesn't feel safe." Ethan nodded slowly. "I feel like I'm living in the waiting room of your life," he said. Sarah looked at him sharply. That wasn't anger. That was honesty. And honesty hurts differently. A moment where neither wins or loses. Ethan stood up slowly. "I'm not going to fight you anymore," he said. Sarah's expression changed slightly. "I'm not trying to fight," she replied. "I know," he said. "That's the problem. There's nothing left to fight, just distance." He looked down for a second, then back at her. "And I don't know how to bridge it alone." Silence. Not heavy. Not painful. Just real. Sarah's first step toward something new. She exhaled slowly. "I don't know how to come back fully," she admitted. Ethan didn't interrupt. "But I don't want to lose you," she added quietly. That sentence changed the tone of the room. Because it wasn't defensive. It wasn't emotional escape. It was vulnerability. Ethan sat down again. Not closer. Not further. Just present. I don't want to lose you either, he said. For the first time in a long time. They agreed on something without conflict. The exhaustion of love that still exists. But agreement didn't fix everything. It just revealed how tired they both were. Sarah leaned back slightly. I think we're both exhausted, she said. Ethan gave a small nod. I think we've been exhausted for a while, he replied. A faint, almost invisible smile passed between them. Not happiness. Recognition. Because sometimes relationships don't break loudly. They wear down quietly. A small memory of who they used to be. Ethan looked at her for a moment. Do you remember when we used to argue about silly things? He asked. Sarah blinked, then nodded slightly. Like what movie to watch, he said. Or who forgot to buy groceries, she added. For a second, something lighter passed between them. Not the past itself, but the memory of ease. Ethan leaned back. I miss that version of us, he said. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Then quietly, I don't know if that version can exist anymore. That truth wasn't bitter, just honest. The turning point, not fixed but real. Ethan looked at her. Then maybe we stop trying to go back, he said. Sarah frowned slightly. And start figuring out what we are now. That sentence stayed in the room. Because it didn't promise repair. It promised effort. And effort is different from hope. The final silence that feels different. They sat there for a long time. No arguments. No emotional explosion. Just quiet presence. Sarah looked around the room. The same house. Same furniture. Same life. But something had shifted. Not healed. Not fixed. But acknowledged. And acknowledgement is sometimes the first real step forward. Ethan's last words in the story. Before the night ended, Ethan spoke one last time. I don't need perfect, he said softly. Sarah looked at him. I just need real. That sentence didn't solve anything. But it opened a door that had been closed for too long. Final scene, two people still together, still trying. Later that night, they didn't sleep immediately. They stayed in the same house. Same space. Different thoughts. But something had changed. The silence was no longer a wall. It was a pause. And pauses sometimes lead to something new. Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Ethan was beside her. Not touching. Not distant. Just there. For the first time in a long time. Neither of them felt completely alone in the silence. And even though everything wasn't fixed, something fragile had survived.